Part 3 of First Successful Ascent of Mount Rainier, 1870, by Hazard Stevens. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Sue Anderson. It was now 5 p.m. We had spent 11 hours of unremitting toil in making the ascent, and, thoroughly fatigued and chilled by the cold, bitter gale, we saw ourselves obliged to pass the night on the summit without shelter or food except our meager lunch. It would have been impossible to descend the mountain before nightfall and sure destruction to attempt in darkness. We concluded to return to a mass of rocks not far below, and there pass the night as best we could, burrowing in the loose debris. The middle peak of the mountain, however, was evidently the highest, and we determined to first visit it. Retracing our steps along the narrow crest of its success as we made the scene of our triumph, we crossed an intervening depression in the dome and ascended the middle peak, about a mile distant and 200 feet higher than Peak Success. Climbing over a rocky ridge which crowns the summit, we found ourselves within a circular crater 200 yards in diameter, filled with a solid layer of snow and enclosed with a rim of rocks projecting above the snow all around. As we crossed the crater in the snow, Van Trump detected the odor of sulfur, and the next instant, numerous jets of steam and smoke were observed issuing from the crevices of the rocks, which formed the rim on the northern side. Never was a discovery more welcome. Hastening forward, we both exclaimed as we bent our chilled and benumbed extremities over one of Pluto's fires, that here we would pass the night, secure against freezing to death at least. These jets were from the size of that of a large steam pipe to a faint, scarcely perceptible emission, and issued all around the rim on the mountain slopes on the northern side for more than half the circumference of the crater. At intervals they would puff up more strongly, and the smoke would collect in a cloud until blown aside and scattered by the wind, and then their force would abate for a time. A deep cavern extending into and under the ice and formed by the action of heat was found. Its roof was a dome of brilliant green ice with long icicles pendant from it, while its floor, composed of the rocks and debris which formed the side of the crater, descended at an angle of 30 degrees. 40 feet within its mouth we built a wall of stones, enclosing a space 5 by 6 feet, with a strong jet of steam and heat. Unlike the angular, broken rocks met with elsewhere, within the crater we found well-rounded boulders and stones of all sizes, worn as smooth by the trituration of the crater as by the action of water. Nowhere, however, did we observe any new lava or other evidences of recent volcanic action, excepting these issues of steam and smoke. Enclosed within the rude shelter thus hastily constructed, we discussed our future prospects while we ate our lunch and warmed ourselves at our natural register. The heat at the orifice was too great to bear for more than an instant, but the steam wet us, the smell of sulfur was nauseating, and the cold was so severe that our clothes, saturated with the steam, froze stiff when turned away from the heated jet. The wind outside roared and whistled, but it did not much affect us, secure within our cavern, except when an occasional gust came down perpendicularly. However, we passed a most miserable night, freezing on one side and in a hot steam sulfur bath on the other. The dawn at last slowly broke, cold and gray. The tempest howled still which we named Crater Peak, placed the canteen alongside, and covered it with a large stone. I was then literally freezing in the cold, piercing blast, and was glad to hurry back to the crater, breathless and benumbed. We left our den of refuge at length, after exercising violently to start the blood through our limbs, and in attempting to pass around the rocky summit, discovered a second crater, larger than the first, perhaps 300 yards in diameter. It is circular, filled with a bed of snow with a rocky rim all around, and numerous jets of steam issuing from the rocks on the northern side. Both craters are inclined, the first to the west and the latter to the east, with a much steeper inclination, about 30 degrees. The rim of the second crater is higher, or the snowfield inside lower than that of the first, and upon the east side rises in a rocky wall, 30 feet above the snow within. From the summit we obtained a view of the northern peak, still partially enveloped in the driving mist. It appeared about a mile distant, several feet lower than the center peak, and separated from it by a deeper, more abrupt depression or gap than that separating Crater and Success peaks. Like the latter, too, it is a sharp, narrow ridge, springing out from the main mountain, and swept bare of snow on its summit by the wind. The weather was still too threatening, the glimpses of the sun and sky with a thick flying scud were too few and fugitive to warn us in visiting this peak, which we named Peak Tacoma, to perpetuate the Indian name of the mountain. Our route back was the same as on the ascent, with the steepest and most perilous point in descending, the steep gutter where we had been forced to cut steps in the ice. We fastened one end of the rope as securely as possible to the projecting rock, and lowered ourselves down by it as far as it reached, thereby passing a place of comparative safety. We were forced to abandon the rope here, having no means of unfastening it from the rock above. We reached the foot of the rocky range to the ridge, where the real difficulties and dangers of the ascent commenced at 1:30 p.m., 4.5 hours after leaving the crater. We had been 7.5 hours in ascending from this point to the summit with success, and in both cases we toiled hard and lost no time. We now struck out rapidly and joyfully for camp. When nearly there, Van Trump, in attempting to descend a snowbank without his creepers, which he had taken off for greater ease in walking, fell, shot like lightning 40 feet down the steep incline, and struck among some loose rocks at its foot with such force as to rebound several feet into the air. His face and hands were badly skinned, and he received some severe bruises and a deep, wide gash upon his thigh. Fortunately, the camp was not far distant, and thither, with great pain and very slowly, he managed to hobble. Once there, I soon started a blazing fire, made coffee, and roasted choice morsels of a marmot, Sluiskin having killed and dressed 4 of these animals during our absence. Their flesh, like the badger's, is extremely muscular and tough, and has a strong, disagreeable, doggy odor. Towards the close of our repast, we observed the Indian approaching, with his head down and walking slowly and wearily, as though tired by a long tramp. He raised his head as he came nearer, and seeing us for the first time, stopped short, gazed long and fixedly, and then slowly drew nearer, eyeing us closely the while, as if to see whether we were real flesh and blood, or disembodied ghosts, fresh from the evil demon of Tacoma. He seemed both astonished and delighted to find us safe back, and kept repeating that we were strong men, and had brave hearts. Skookum Tillicum, Skookum Tutum. He expected never to see us again, he said, and had resolved to start the next morning for Olympia to report our destruction. The secluded peaks of the Cascade Range. Even Sluiskin, a skillful hunter and accustomed to the pursuit of this animal for years, failed to kill one, notwithstanding he hunted assiduously during our entire stay upon the mountain, 3 days. Sluiskin was greatly chagrined at his failure and promised to bring each of us a sheepskin the following summer, a promise which he faithfully fulfilled. The glacial system of Tacoma is stupendous. The mountain is really the focal center and summit of a region larger than Massachusetts, and the 5 large rivers which water this region all find their sources in its vast glaciers. They are the Cowlitz, which empties into the Columbia, the White, Puyallup, and the Squally rivers, which empty into Puget Sound, 60, 40, and 12 miles, respectively, north of Olympia, and the Wenas, which flows eastward through the range and empties into the Yakima, which joins the Columbia 400 miles above its mouth. These are all large streams from 70 to 100 miles in length. The White, Puyallup, and Cowlitz rivers are each navigable for steamboats for some 30 miles, and like the Nisqually, show the glacial origin by the white and turgid water, which indeed gives the form of its name. The southwestern sides of the mountain furnish the glaciers which form the sources of the Nisqually, and one of these, at Sluiskin's Falls, has been already described. The main Nisqually glacier issues from a deep abyss overhung by the vast rock, along the face of which our route and ascent lay, and extends in a narrow and somewhat crooked canyon for 2 miles. The ice at its extremity rises in an abrupt wall 500 feet high, and a noisy torrent goes out with great force underneath. This feature is characteristic of every glacier. The main Cowlitz Glacier issues from the southeast side, just to the right of our rim of ascent. Its head fills a deep gorge at the foot of the eastern part or face of the great mass of rock just referred to, and the southern face of which overhangs the main Nisqually Glacier. Thus, the heads of these glaciers are separated only by this great rock, and are probably not more than half a mile apart, while their miles are 3 miles apart. Several smaller glaciers serve to swell the waters of the Cowlitz. In like manner, the glaciers from the western side form the Puyallup, and those from the northern and northwestern sides, the White River. The principal White River Glacier is nearly 10 miles long, and its width is from 2 to 4 miles. Its depth, or the thickness of its ice, must be thousands of feet. Streams and rivulets under the heat of the sun flow down its surface while swallowed by the crevasses, and a lakelet of deep blue water an eighth of a mile in diameter has been observed upon the solid ice. Pouring down the mountain, the ice by its immense weight and force has gouged out a mass upon the northeastern side a mile in thickness. The geological formation of Tacoma poorly resists the eroding power of these mighty glaciers, for it seems to be composed not of solid rock, but of a basaltic conglomerate in strata, as though the volcanic force had burst through and rent in places some earlier basaltic outflow, and had heaped up this vast pile from fragments in successive strata. On every side the mountain is slowly disintegrating. What other peak could offer to scientific examination or to the admiration of tourists 14 living glaciers of such magnitude issuing from every side, or such grandeur, beauty, and variety of scenery? At daylight we broke up our camp at Suspense Falls and moved slowly, the wind trumps hurt, down the ridge about 5 miles to Clear Creek, where we again regaled ourselves upon a hearty repast of marmots, or raw dog, as Van Trump styled them, in derision both of the violent and the cooking. I was convinced from the lay of the country that Clear Creek flowed into the Nisqually, or was perhaps the main stream itself, and that the most direct and feasible route back to Bear Prairie would be found by following down the valley of these streams to the trail leading from the Nisqually to Bear Prairie. Besides, it was evidently impossible for Van Trump, in his bruised and injured state, to retrace our rough route over the mountains. Leaving him as comfortable as possible, with all our scanty stock of flour and walnuts, sufficient to last him nearly a week in case of need, I started immediately after dinner, with Sluiskin leading the way to explore this new route. The Indian had opposed the attempt strenuously, insisting that without urgency, the stream flowed through canyons impossible for us to traverse. We now gradually veered away from the course of the stream, until ere long he was leading directly up the steep mountain range upon our former route, when I called him back peremptorily and kept him in the rear for a little distance. Traveling through open timber, over ground rapidly descending, we came at the end of 2 miles to where the stream is hemmed in between one of the long ridges or spurs from Tacoma and the high mountain chain on the south. The stream, receiving many affluents on both sides, its clear waters soon discolored by the yeasty glacial torrents, here loses its peaceful flow, and for upwards of 3 miles rushes furiously down a narrow, broken, and rocky bed in a succession of falls and cascades of great picturesque beauty. With much toil and difficulty, we picked our way over a wide talus of huge broken granite rocks and boulders along the foot of a vast mountain of solid granite on the south side of the river until near the end of the defile, then crossed the stream, and soon after encountered a still larger branch coming from the north direct from Tacoma, the product doubtless of the glaciers of the southern and southwestern sides. Fording this branch just above its confluence with the other, we followed the general course of the river, now unmistakably the Nisqually, for about 4 miles. Then, leaving it, we struck off nearly south through the forest for 3 miles and emerged upon the Bear Prairie. The distance was about 13 miles from where we left Van Trump, and we were only some 6 hours in traveling it, while it took 17 hours of terribly severe work to make the mountain route under Sluiskin's guidance. Without his help on the shorter route too, it would have taken me more than twice the time it did. For the manner in which, after entering the defile of the Nisqually, Sluiskin again took the lead, proceeded in a direct and unhesitating course, securing every advantage of the ground, availing himself of the wide rocky bars along the river, crossing and recrossing the milky flood, which rushed along with terrific swiftness and fury, and occasionally forcing his way through the thick timber and underbrush in order to cut out wide bends of the river, and at length leaving it and striking boldly through the forest to Bear Prairie, proved him familiar with every bit of the country. His objections to the route evidently arose from the jealousy so common with his people of further exploration of the country by the whites. As long as they keep within the limits already known and explored, they are faithful and indefatigable guides, but they invariably interpose every obstacle their ingenuity can suggest to deter the adventurous mountaineer from exposing the few last hidden recesses that remain unexplored. Mr. Coleman was found safe in camp, and seemed too glad to see us to think of reproaching us for our summary abandonment. He said that in attempting to follow us, he climbed up so precipitous a place that, encumbered with his heavy pack, he could neither advance nor recede. He was compelled, therefore, to throw off the pack, which rolled to the very bottom of the mountain, and being thus delivered of his necessary outfit, he was forced to return to camp. He had been unable to find his pack, but having come across some quick marketer's spikes among his remaining effects, he was resolved to continue his trip too and make the ascent of Rainier by himself. He had just completed his preparations, and especially had deposited on top of the lofty mountain which overlooked the prairie 2 caches or stores of provisions. At daylight next morning, Sluiskin, with his little boy riding one of his own ponies, himself riding our little calico-colored pack horse, now well rested and saucy, started back for Van Trump with directions to meet us at the trail in the Nisqually. Heavy, drizzling rain set in soon afterwards. Mr. Coleman, who had gone early to bring in the contents of his mountaintop caches, returned about noon with a very small bundle, and packing our traps upon Sluiskin's other pony, we moved over to the rendezvous, pitched Coleman's large gunship as a partial shelter, made a rousing fire, and tried to be comfortable. Late in the afternoon, the pony set up a violent neighing, and in a few minutes, Van Trump and Sluiskin, with his little boy behind him, rode up, drenched to the skin. By following the bed of the river, frequently crossing and recrossing, the Indian had managed to ride to the very foot of the Nisqually we found. Then, leaving the horses in his boy's care, he hastened to Van Trump and carefully led and assisted him down. Despite the pain of his severe hurts, the latter was much amused at Sluiskin's account of our trip, and of finding Mr. Coleman safe in camp making tea, and for long after would repeat as an excellent joke Sluiskin's remark on passing the credit that he had attempted to mislead me. "Stupid Thomas, man, how you goddamn." We sent the horses back by the Indian to Bear Prairie for grass, there being no indications of the rain ceasing. The storm indeed lasted 3 days, during which we remained sheltered beneath the gum sheet as far as possible, and endeavored to counteract the rain by heaping up our fire in front. About 8 o'clock on the second morning, Sluiskin reported himself with our horse, which he returned, he said, because he was about to return to his lodge on the Cowlitz, being destitute of shelter and food for his family on Bear Prairie. He vigorously replenished the fire, declined breakfast, jeered Coleman for turning back, although probably the latter did not comprehend his broken lingo, and departed. Sluiskin was an original and striking character, leading a solitary life of hardships amidst these wilds, yet of unusual native intelligence. He had contrived, during rare visits to the settlements, to acquire the Chinook jargon, besides a considerable stock of English words, while his fund of general information was really wonderful. He was possessed of a shrewd, sarcastic wit, and making no pretense to the traditional gravity of his race, did not scruple to use it freely. Yet beneath this, he cherished a high sense of pride and personal independence. Although of the blood of the numerous and powerful Yakimas who occupied the country just east of the Cascades, he disdained to render allegiance to them or any tribe, and undoubtedly regarded the superintendent of Indian affairs, or even the great father at Washington himself, with equal contemptuous indifference. As the last rays of the sun, one warm, drowsy summer afternoon, were falling aslant the shady streets of Olympia, Mr. Longmire's well-worn family carryall, drawn by 2 fat, grass-filled horses, came rattling down the main street at a most unusual pace for them. 2 bright flags attached to alpine staffs, and projecting from each door, fluttered nearly overhead, while the occupants of the carriage looked eagerly forth to catch the first glimpse of welcoming friends. We returned after our tramp of 240 miles, with visages tanned and sun-scorched, and with forms as lean and gaunt as greyhounds, and were received and lionized to the full, like veterans returning from an arduous and glorious campaign. The days afterwards, in walking felt a strong impulse to step high, as though still striding over the innumerable fallen logs and boughs of the forest. And for weeks our appetites were a source of astonishment to our friends, and somewhat mortifying to ourselves. More than 2 months had elapsed before Mr. Van Trump fully recovered from his hurts. We published at the time short newspaper accounts of the ascent, and although an occasional old Puget Sounder will still growl, "They say they went to the top of Mount Rainier, but I'd like to see them prove it," we were justly regarded as the first, and as I believe, the only ones up to the present time who have ever achieved the summit of Tacoma. End of part 3. End of first successful ascent of Mount Rainier, 1870, by Hazard Stevens.